The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. I'm losing my voice a little bit today. I don't know what's up with that, but I'm thrilled to be here. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. All the things that you might encounter if you are yourself on the autism spectrum, or you have a loved one who's on the spectrum, or you have a student who's on the autism spectrum. We know that no matter where you're approaching the spectrum, that you want to see progress. We all want to see progress, right? So that's what we talk about, how we get to the good stuff. And sometimes we have to wade through some bad stuff to get to some good stuff, but there is so much help, and there's help and hope. So I melded those two words together and made a new word. In any case, we're going to talk about some of the different ways that we can access information to help us on this journey. I have some things in front of me because we're going to be continuing on with our Holiday Giveaway Extravaganza today. And so in this first hour, we've got some great games to be giving away. I've got here Cornered, which on my green screen looks a little bit funny, but this is an awesome game put out by Endless Games, and we've talked about this a little bit before on the show. This game is also, it's a proud partner with Autism Speaks because it's particularly good for our kids on the autism spectrum. But it isn't only for kids on the autism spectrum. This is a patterning game that is good for all of us, getting our brains to work in a different way. It's really fun when you play this with a group of people to see how quickly their heads can kind of shift gears and see this puzzle in the way that they need to in order to win the game. Very fun, and you can play it in lots of different ways. My son really enjoys this. It hurts my husband's head, but I really love it too. And it's great for my son's self-esteem because he can whoop mama and daddy at playing this very easily. So again, this is from Endless Games, a really great game, and they're a proud partner with Autism Speaks on this game. Even have a lovely picture of a young girl on the autism spectrum featured on the box because she's part of the reason why it came to everybody's attention that this is particularly good for kids on the autism spectrum. So that is Cornered. We're going to be giving away one of those during this hour. And then the other, oh, I'm spilling things everywhere. Wrecking the joint. The other great game that comes to us from Endless Game that we're giving away in this hour is Crazy Legs. I don't know if you saw when we had Brian Turtle from Endless Games on, we were talking about this particular game. I was saying that this is sort of Candyland in this century because it's a very easy game that your pre-readers can play. And there's a very colorful board. You move the pieces around the board, but it adds in physical exercise into this game. So you roll the dice and you either land on a spot that tells you to do something, like maybe everybody at the table has to do the wave, or there's things like crazy dance for 10 seconds and everybody has to get up and crazy dance. Or you can pick a card if you land on a certain space, and then you have to do, there are a whole bunch of yoga poses for people to do, or just an activity for them to do, like jump up in the air. So there, I see one here on the back of the box that's hop like a frog. There's a rock pose, and there's one super jump and a table pose. We had a great time playing this, my family, because we tried out all these games, and I thought it was just awesome. This is a great game to play with those younger kids that you need to get moving, and you can do this with pre-readers. Really spectacular game. So we're giving that away in this hour too. Now you might, if you're new to the show, you might be saying, what's up with this holiday giveaway? We're wanting to help you out during the holidays, and so every hour that we're live from now to December 20th, which is our final show of the year, every hour that we're live, we're going to be giving at least one gift away, but today we're giving 2 each hour. So those are the 2 for this hour. At some point during this first hour, Emily will flash onto the screen a mystery word or phrase. You'll need to note that and take it down. Then you want to email us here at the show. There's the address that you want to email to. Make sure that you get it to us by 7 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. So if you're watching the live show, that's great. If you're watching the recorded show, it's all great, but you have till 7 a.m. tomorrow morning to get that correct response to us. In the subject line, put the game that you want, whether you want Cornered or Crazy Legs, in this hour, and there'll be others in the next hour. And then in the body of the email, make sure you put the correct phrase or word that was shown during this hour. Of the correct responses, we'll be picking one winner for each game, and we will notify you via mail to let you know that you've won, and we'll be asking for your address so that we can get these out to you as quickly as possible. So every hour, we'll be doing that between now and December 20th. It's very exciting. We hope that not only will you participate, but that you'll tell other people. You know that there are people out there who could use an extra gift under the tree this year without having to pay for it. We want to spread that joy, right? It's good karma if you tell somebody about it. It makes you more likely to win, I believe. In any case, I want to remind you here at the top of the show that this whole show is meant to be interactive, that we really appreciate your questions, comments, concerns. And when we have guests here, we love it when you interact with them. There are lots of different ways to participate. Emily's going to cycle through some of the different ways that you can participate. I'll remind you that if you go to www.autism-live.com, you'll see a lovely desktop. Love our website design that was done for us by Suzette Garcia. And there is a computer on the desktop. Click on the arrow on the computer and you can be watching the live show, or you can be watching the most recently recorded live show. And you can also cycle through some of the more recent shows there as well. Then there's a white box next to that screen. Put your cursor there, type away whatever you want to say to us, hit enter, and it shows up here on my screen. Then you and I can be having a conversation. You can be asking a question of our many experts that we feature here on the show. And the great thing about it is it's totally free, doesn't cost you a cent. There's no login process. In fact, we don't get any of your personal information at all. And the good thing about that is total anonymity. You can feel comfortable to ask whatever question you want, and you know there is no stupid question, right? Especially in the field of autism. Ask questions because it helps other people to know what questions to ask, right? But the bad thing about not knowing who you are is if you send us a question and you want further information, we don't have a way of getting a hold of you. So if you do want more information, make sure you put contact information in your original message, and I can edit that out before showing it to the audience at home. We'll preserve your anonymity, but I'll have a way of getting in touch with you. And we love it when you guys send us links. We've had people sending us links to stories that you want us to cover. We thoroughly enjoy that. So we hope that you will take the opportunity to interact, and Emily showed you some of the other ways that you can interact. I'm just going to remind you that if you go to our Facebook page, there are a lot of the stories that we cover here. We put additional information there as well and let you know things that are going on. Sometimes we show you behind the scenes pictures of things that are coming up, things that we're filming that we're getting ready to cycle in. And you can also sign up for the newsletter when you go to our Facebook page. And I hope that, now when you go to a Facebook page and you like it, you're given the opportunity to share it with other people. And our whole mission here is to provide information in a free format, and we're able to do that and right now, and I hope that we'll be able to continue doing that, but it really depends on our viewership. So I will encourage you here at the end of the year that we don't want a donation. We want you to just share the information with other people, that they can come here, they can get information, they can ask their questions, they can be a part of a group of people who believe and know that there's progress for all of our individuals on the autism spectrum. So share that information and we will greatly appreciate it. I like to remind you at the start of the show that I am not an expert in autism. That's why we have experts come in and talk with me, and experts that we Skype with on a regular basis. But my credential to be here is that I'm a mom. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He's now 10, about to be, in fact, he's 10.5 today. I just realized in this moment it's his half birthday. How exciting for him that I remembered. He's 10.5 today and doing remarkably well because of the information that we got. And I try every day to pay that forward and to help as many people as I can to get information that you need. I don't always know what you need. So when you let us know, that helps me to fulfill that. I have a big tab I have to pay forward. So help me to do that by letting me know what you need, and I'll get busy trying to get you some answers, get you hooked up with the resources that you need. All right. But I'm not the expert, but I'll hook you up with the people who are the experts. How's that? As to the very best of my ability. Now, we like to start every morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to make sense of it. You know, if you're fairly new to this journey through autism, or if you've been around for a while, you can wade in or get overwhelmed by the jargon that will be meeting you every meeting that you go to. And for years I fought it. I just fought it. I said, why can't they speak in a way that we all understand? Why do they have to make it so difficult? And then I began to realize that it saves time if you understand what these words and phrases mean. So we try to do this in a way that it reduces the pain of it by taking it on a little bit at a time and then reusing these words over and over and over again. And I hear from the things that you guys write in, boy, you get it. You're really getting the jargon. I'm very proud of all of us because nobody had this in their day planner, right? Oh, I'm going to learn a bunch of new jargon. Yes, no. So in any case, we always give you an actual definition, and then we give you a watered down version that hopefully you can access a little bit better. It kind of gives the BCBA's hives when we water it down, but you have to start somewhere, right? So today's term, very exciting to me. This is some mind-blowing stuff right here. Our term today is errorless learning. Ooh. What on earth is that, Shannon? Well, here, let's take on our actual definition. It's an instructional design introduced by psychologist B.F. Skinner in the 1930s as part of his studies on what would make the most effective learning environment. Skinner said, errors are not necessary for learning to occur. And that is directly from Wikipedia if you look up errorless learning. Okay. And I specifically put it directly in because it just demonstrates that while this is very intriguing to me, okay, this is the definition, and B.F. Skinner certainly heard that term before, right? B.F. Skinner, came up with this, and this idea of it's the most effective learning environment that we're creating here. That's all great, but I still don't know how to do it, right? So let's take a look at our working definition. Errorless learning is teaching procedures that are specifically designed so that the learner does not have to and does not make mistakes as they learn new information. And this, honestly, is a very effective teaching tool for anyone, for all of us, whether we're on the spectrum or not. But when we are dealing with a child who has any kind of a learning disability, that they are behind and having trouble gaining information, this is particularly effective. I used to always say that my son was like a dry erase board, that I could teach him things and he may get it in the moment, but it was as though every couple of hours and certainly every night, the dry erase board got wiped clean and we had to start all over again because his short-term memory was a little effective and his medium-term memory and long-term effective were non-existent. And that happens with a lot of our kids. Well, errorless learning helps with that. Because we give lots of opportunities and there's no failure. But for all of us, what's really effective about errorless learning is that we get to the good part of learning, which is the reward of having gotten something right. And we're going to talk a little bit more, and I'm going to do a demo a little bit later on in the show of errorless learning. But keep that in mind, that we're setting up a circumstance in which the learner does not have to make mistakes and doesn't make mistakes. How exciting is that? It's going to seem a little counterintuitive when we talk about it in one of the future segments here this hour, but I can tell you firsthand as a former teacher, and I can tell you as a mom of a child on the autism spectrum, it's really effective. So we'll talk just a little bit more about that, but keep in mind, they don't have to make a mistake. That's the key here. Okay, we always have a question of the day that we like to ask you guys and have you answer it for us on Facebook. We're going to be checking in a little bit later on to see what you guys have written in. We want to know, have you ever used a visual schedule with your child? And if you don't know what a visual schedule is, that's okay, because that's our jargon term tomorrow. And it'll be very useful for people who don't know to see your answers today. If you haven't used a visual schedule, we're going to be talking about that tomorrow, about how effective it can be. But we'd like to hear from those of you who have used it. How have you used it, and how was it effective? What did it help to get at? Because we always have a topic of the week, and our topic this entire week is looking at a very specific kind of intervention, and that is antecedent modifications. More jargon. I'm throwing more jargon at you today, because guess what? You can handle this. And we're going to go deep in depth on this today, about how we look at behavior and how we can change behaviors. It's the holidays. And it doesn't matter which holiday you're celebrating. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. You can feel it in all the adults. The pressure, it starts to build up, right? And even if you have an individual child or adult who doesn't normally engage in challenging behavior, boy, this is the time of year where we just turn the dial up on all of us, right? I had a friend the other day who does not have a weight problem and is always incredibly healthy. And she said, I don't know what's the matter with me. I can't stop eating. And we talked a little bit about it. There were a lot of different stimuli that are going on in all of our lives that are creating environments in which we may all engage in challenging behavior. So is it at all shocking that a lot of our kids on the autism spectrum are going to engage in challenging behavior? It's more likely that everyone is, let's say this, meltdowns are going to be more prevalent for all of us. If you had Thanksgiving dinner with relatives, what are the odds? I'm just asking, how many of you had somebody at the table have a meltdown? And a lot of times it's not the child with autism, right? I know I looked at my Facebook and there were a lot of people who were writing in over the weekend saying, I left, my aunt's house in tears because this person said this, that, or the other thing, right? People will engage in challenging behavior. We don't just accept challenging behavior, whether it's in our child who has autism or it's in Aunt Martha who can't seem to control herself, right? We want to work to create progress. Well, an antecedent modification is something that can really help us. If you're confused at all, don't worry, because we're about to go over some things that are going to really help you. In fact, some of the things that we have on the agenda today, we are going to go back to the basics, ABA basics. We're going to tear this down step by step in a really, parent language, because that's what I am, of how understanding the ABCs of behavior can help us to change behavior in ourselves, in our children, in the adults that surround us, how we can mold and channel energies to be productive and not tearing things down. We're going to talk today about using those techniques to prevent meltdowns, and we're also going to be going through some very specific things for the holidays, things that will help us to navigate this time in a happy and joyous way, right? That's what it's supposed to be, happy and joyous and mindful time instead of the stress and the worry and all of those concerns. So all of that and your questions and comments as this show begins. So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and take on ABA basics. Stick with us. Hi, right, we're at the Toys R Us in Porter Ranch, California. And Emily and I are going to take a little tour around the store and find some great toys for some great kids.
All right, let's go.
Come with us.
Yes.
Okay, bring your dinosaur and come on. Let's go look at things in the game aisle.
Okay.
I know you love games.
I do love.
All right. So here we are in the game aisle, Emily, and I want to show you that there's all these games that you can get for kids of all ages. They're interactive and really remarkable. One of the hot toys this year and many other years is the Bop It toy.
Okay, so what about the Bop It is so reinforcing?
Well, you know what? It can be interactive. It can be a social game. It makes lots of noises. Sometimes they light up depending on the version. It helps to work on fine motor skills and it helps to work on fluency. This toy will grow with the child. And in fact, you can get it in different versions. This is a little bit more complex version. And up top here, we have one that's especially for older kids. It's called the Smash the Light. I would wait until a child is older to play with this one. So should we check out the Lego aisle?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's go. So how can we use Legos to help our kids?
Well, they're really spectacular toys for our kids because they work on executive functions and planning. They're really colorful. You can work on colors and grouping and matching, counting because they have the little dots on the top. And if you have a younger child, you can start with the Duplo toys that are compatible with Lego and they don't have the choking hazard.
So then as the kids get older, what's great about Legos, it looks like, is that there's all sorts of themes. We've got movies here and video games, so the kids can really connect with what's personal to them. So Legos are amazing, but what else do we have to see?
Let's look at some educational toys in the leapfrog aisle, shall we? Okay.
Okay, so what do you have here?
Well, we're in the leapfrog aisle. This particular toy, very popular this year, is a leap reader. It comes with a little pen, and it tells us that we're going to read, write, and listen, all skills that we want to work on with a child. This pen that's in this box, you can put it over different pages in the book. It will read aloud to the child. They can trace their letters. It reinforces them for doing a great job. It's a really spectacular toy for our younger kids that are working on reading, writing, and listening.
This looks like a lot of fun and a really great way to help our kids learn to read and write.
Absolutely.
What else are we going to play with today?
I think we should take a trip down the functional pretend play aisle. This is where you're going to find all the things that are like real, but the toy version. So I've got this lovely set here that's all fresh vegetables, so I'm teaching nutrition at the same time. They're all appropriately colored. I've got a knife so I can be cutting them too. This is really great play for a young child.
Shannon, I heard you got some toys that I get to play with now.
Yes, I'm going to take you to the demo table. We're going to let Emily play with some toys, and we're going to be giving some of these toys away on the show. But they're not just any toys. These are toys that are featured in this year's Toys R Us toy guide for differently abled children. And this is put together with the help of our friends at Lecotech.
So what do all these different icons mean?
These are different icons that tell us what skill this toy might help to develop in our children.
So can I play with the toys now?
Yes, it's time to play with the toys, Emily.
So I think I recognize this guy.
Yes, this is the ever popular and very sweet Elmo. But this is a very specific Elmo that teaches adaptive skills like zippering.
Almost yellow triangle zipper.
And so we get the reinforcement of Elmo talking to us when we do these things. There's a let's keep playing. So it encourages the child to continue to interact. And he's very reinforcing. When he giggles, I just want to hug him and play with him some more. Okay, so moving on, let's look at some Melissa and Doug toys. These are incredible toys. They'll last several different generations because they're made out of good quality wood.
Awesome.
And let's start with a lace and trace toy. Now, I happen to know that you love turtles,
I do
Emily.
love turtles.
And this is a set of farm animals lace and trace. And the child can pick out a color that they like for a lace.
All right.
And there are lots of different things that they can do with this. And I know it might seem like this is an old-fashioned toy, but you know, sometimes the old-fashioned toys are the best toys. Because what you're doing right now, Emily, is that you're using a lot of hand-eye coordination and you're using the pincer grasp. This is a precursor to writing right here. If you've got a child who's having difficulty holding a pencil, this is a really reinforcing way to work on this. And it comes in lots of different things. And then also for Melissa and Doug, we have this amazing using Switch and Spin. Love this so much. This is a great cause and effect toy. As we start to put the gears together, we notice that when you turn one, another one can turn. You can rearrange this and do it in lots of different ways. There are 10 design boards, so you don't have to just do fish. There are other things that you can put there instead.
That's awesome.
Kids love this toy, and it's another Melissa and Doug toy.
Cool.
All right, let's take a look at some fun games.
So I found this game, and it's called Fibber. So Shannon, I'm going to need you to put on your fibbing glasses.
I want a fib.
All right. So this game is totally reinforcing, and it helps our kids to work on lying.
Yes, and that's something we really, I know it sounds strange, but we want to work on that because being able to tell a lie is something that helps with safety issues. And also being able to tell if somebody else is lying is a really useful life skill.
What you need to do is get rid of your cards without trying to grow your nose, kind of like Pinocchio.
Okay.
But if you get caught...
And so eventually you can have a whole string of noses attached to the end of your nose. Very colorful. Again, we can be working on the colors. Kind of hilarious. A kid's going to want to play this with mom or dad and see that mom is Pinocchio telling lots of lies. I like this game a lot.
This is a great game.
We've had a really great time at Toys R Us, and all of the toys that you see here on the table we're going to be giving away on the show. So stay tuned to find out how you can win one of these great toys.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm so busy watching us with the toys. We had such a good time at Toys R Us, and we have to thank Toys R Us for not only allowing us to come in and film, but they donated all of those toys that we demoed. In fact, in the next hour, we're going to be giving away one of those toys that Toys R Us gave to us, and I'll give you a little hint that it's a he, and he's red and furry. So we have 2 toys to give away in the next hour, but one of them is from the Toys R Us, from that video shoot. So we want to give a big thank you to our Toys R Us friends, and also to Lecotech, who Lecotech is really they're, you know, sort of the wizard behind the curtain on that differently abled toy guide, because they're the ones who review all of those toys and say this is what this toy will help to develop and what it'll help to work on. So we want to thank our friends at Lecotech, who they do a really remarkable job of giving us clues as to which toys are helpful and useful. So, and a big thank you to Emily, who stepped in that day and was able to help me during the shoot. You don't get to see Emily very much, although we've got her doing more stuff in front of the camera, which she kicks and screams a little bit, but she does such a good job, so we're going to make her from now on. In any case, I digress greatly. Wanted to talk about ABA basics right now, because every once in a while it pays for us to go back and talk about why do we talk about this so much. You know, we talk about a lot of different kinds of treatment and a lot of different things that we can do to help our kids, but you know that, you know, sort of the core centerpiece of it is ABA, and that I do talk about that and say that, you know, we might talk about something, yesterday Nancy and I were talking about biomedical, and that's really individual, child by child, and you're going to get different results, and they need different things. There's no one size fits all, right? And there really isn't with ABA either, except that we know that all of our kids need to get ABA. All of our children don't need to get biomedical, but all of our kids need to get ABA, and we know for sure that all of our kids are going to see some amount of progress with ABA. It's going to look differently, the progress, and they're going to start in different places and they're going to end in different places, but all of our kids can benefit from ABA. And if somebody has been telling you, one of the, you know, 2 of the myths that we talk about all the time, there will be people who will say, oh, well, ABA is not going to help, and then fill in the blank. They'll say, oh, it's not for those high functioning kids. Oh, no, no, no. Your child who has Asperger's, oh, no, 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 no. They, you know, don't do ABA with them. This is absolutely false. We know, in fact, that science has shown that it's particularly effective with those high functioning kids at getting the highest possible outcomes. That if those kids have the benefit of a good, solid, intensive ABA program, that we're not talking about, if we're talking about a 5-year-old who's high functioning and people say, oh, well, they don't need ABA, or oh, they only need 5 hours of ABA. No, ma'am, that is not what the science shows. So giving them that intervention, very, very effective. And then you'll hear the opposite too, that they'll say, oh, well, you know, here's a child who's so profoundly affected that you know, they don't have enough skills to benefit from ABA. And that also is that steaming pile trial of you know what. That's just not the case. We know that for a young person really of any age who needs functional communication skills, one of the most effective things that we can do is to give them intensive ABA to help them to get those functional communication skills, and that will greatly affect their quality of life and the quality of life of the people around them, because a person who can effectively communicate their needs has less need of challenging behavior. And this is exactly why we talk about ABA, because ABA does two things. It increases behavior that you want to see more of, and it decreases behavior that you want to see less of. So think about any individual in your life and that you're having a tough time with, who happens to be on the autism spectrum, and you're thinking, gosh, what are the hard times of the day, like, getting ready in the morning, and you think about, well, what are the skills that your child is lacking to make that an easier time? Maybe tying their shoes, maybe your child's ability to understand what's being said to them and to follow a direction. You want to increase those skills. Well, ABA works to increase those skills. On the flip side of it, what's the challenging behavior? Is the child throwing tantrums? Are they biting? Are they hitting? Are they being completely non-compliant? Those are all in the challenging behavior column, and ABA reduces those challenging behaviors. So we increase behaviors we want to see more of, and we decrease behaviors we want to see less of. Doesn't it sound great? Doesn't it just sound like the promised land? Well, it is in a lot of ways. And again, the equation is different for each child, what it is that they're working on, but it has the ability to significantly change outcomes, to significantly change quality of life. So when we talk, how though? How? Well, how are they making this amazing thing happen? Well, basic principles of ABA are, I always say principle number one is that any behavior and everything that we do is behavior. Excuse me, everything that we do is behavior. And any behavior that we engage in over and over and over again, you might consider it a habit, but really there is so much that we do in life, ways that we cope and ways that we navigate our world, right? That's all behavior, and it's repeated behavior. The only reason why we repeat a behavior over and over and over again is if there's some sort of value in it for us. We call it the paycheck. What's the paycheck for this behavior? So the child that's having tantrums, and I know this is like you go, oh, wait a minute, you're losing me here, Shannon, but stick with me. The child that has tantrums is getting some sort of paycheck for that behavior. I know it seems impossible, right? Because the tantrums are so terrible. It's hard for you. It's hard for them. But there is some sort of payoff. And we'll talk a little bit later on in the show about what the 4 usual suspects are for the behavior. But first, I want to break it down into the ABCs of behavior so that we understand exactly what the equation is that we're looking at time and time again. And it's called the ABCs of behavior because it helps us to break it down and understand exactly what the progression is. So A stands for antecedent. It's the thing that happens right before the behavior. The B of the ABCs stands for the behavior. So the antecedent happens, then the behavior happens, and then comes the C, the consequence. Every time that you or I engage in a behavior, it follows that equation. A, B, C. Antecedent, behavior, consequence. That's true of us. It's true of every living thing on the planet. Something happens, there is a behavior, and then there is a consequence for it, right? You can do this with your fish in the goldfish tank, right? I know before I killed the fish, and yes, I killed the fish, if I lifted the little lid on the aquarium before I'm going to put the food in, right? The fish had realized that, when you lift that lid, I'm about to get food, right? So what would happen? So the little squeak of the lid would go up, right? And I would sprinkle the food on top of the water, and the fish were already there because they'd heard the squeak. That was the antecedent. They engaged in the behavior, and the consequence was they got to eat faster because they were already there. So they got a really great reward for it. They didn't have to fight with the other fish. The ones who were there got more of the select pieces, right? So there was an antecedent, was the squeak of the thing. There's the behavior. They go to the top, and the consequence consequence for it was they got to be there right when the food came. They got the reward. And this behavior worked for them so that they did it on a regular basis until I didn't check the pH and killed the fish. What can I tell you? In any case, it's not funny. My son is still upset with me about it. But the example that I love to use because it makes the most sense for me is that at some point and every day, you're in your environment and there comes a moment in which you can't see well enough without turning the light on. You might be in your kitchen and you're cooking dinner and the light fades enough outside and you don't even think about it anymore, but there gets a point when you can't see anymore. So you walk over and you flip the switch, right? That's the behavior that you engage in. You stop doing what you're doing, you go over and you flip the switch, and the consequence is that light floods the room and you can go back to what you're doing and you can see. And we don't even think about it. We don't even think about the reward that we get when the light switch turns. Well, what happens when we change one of the equations in this behavior that has happened again and again and again and again? So we've got the antecedent, what happens before, and we have the consequence that happens afterwards. What happens if we change part of the sequence? How do we behave? And does it eventually change our behavior? And the answer to that, and there's been so much research done on this, is that yes, it absolutely has the ability to and will change the behavior if it's consistently done. So it may take a little while, but it will change the behavior. So for the child who is consistently throwing a tantrum, every time we go to grandma's house, the tantrum happens and the child throws a fit and we all feel like we want to bang our heads against the wall and go, I hate going to grandma's house, because every time we go to grandma's house, this child has a meltdown. Well, we need to start looking at what's the A. We know what the B is. It's the meltdown, right? But we're going to even look at it a little bit closer. But what was the A? There's always an A. And what's the C? Because something in there is feeding and giving a paycheck to the B, to the behavior. It may be that right before, so we're at grandma's house, and it may be that right before the meltdown, we put a demand on the child. We're asking them to do something. And, it might seem innocuous to us that we might be asking the child, here, sit on this bench at grandma's house, this chair. And, there's nothing wrong with the chair, but this is where we're going to sit to eat. And that's when the tantrum happens. And the consequence for it always is that eventually we give up and we let the child get down from the chair and they go and play, and we go, I don't get it. I don't understand why this is happening. All I know is that I want it to stop. But what we might find out is that there's something about that chair that's uncomfortable for the child that wouldn't be uncomfortable for you or I. And to avoid sitting in that chair, the child will do whatever they have to do so that the consequence happens that they get to get down. Right? We had a young man who was on the show yesterday who talked about how badly he hated to go to school when he was in elementary and high school because he was so badly bullied. And he said, I would hide my shoes so that I wouldn't have to go. And I'm sure that it took his mother a long time to realize, okay, wait a second, what is it that's happening here? Because a lot of times it's a little bit of a conundrum, but we can unravel the puzzle. And we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and talk about how you can start to look at behavior and chart it for yourself to help yourself to be able to figure out what's going on. And if you can't figure it out, the best way that you can go and get the most bang for your buck if you're talking to a BCBA, an expert in behavior, to have them help you to figure it out. So stick with us. More on ABA basics after these messages.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3 is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, there are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. First, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith.
Welcome back. I'm not doing origami. I'm just folding a piece of paper to show you how easy it is to make a chart in which you can talk about the ABCs of behavior. So take a regular piece of paper, you fold it over 3 times, and what you've got is a piece of paper with 3 columns. And we've been talking a little bit about the ABCs of the behavior, So you would put an A in the top of one column, a B, and a C. Now, it's important to talk about the fact that experts are so helpful when looking at behavior, and we never want to leave ourselves in a circumstance where we're not including experts who can really help us to get to the bottom of these behaviors. But as parents and as teachers, we can help the experts, and we can cut down the amount of time that we have to spend with the experts that usually you're paying for, someone's paying for, right? By being as well versed in the ABCs of behavior as we possibly can. If you call in a BCBA to work on a challenging behavior with your child, they're going to ask you to do this anyway. So if you've done it beforehand, you're going to save time and money. And sometimes when the behavior isn't too challenging, this can help us to figure it out for ourselves. But again, I want to stress the fact that if you've got a really serious challenging behavior, you really shouldn't be trying to figure it out for yourself, right? I was talking about we don't try to figure out our car, what's happening with our car, unless we understand cars, right? So if you're not an expert in behavior, you really don't want to be messing too much if it's a challenging behavior that has the potential for your child or someone else to get hurt, right? Okay, that's my little disclaimer. So you got your piece of paper and you're going to put A, B, and C in these 3 columns. And so we've got our lovely chart here that says, again, A is the antecedent, B is the behavior, and C is the consequence. So you carry your little sheet with you, and you can also do this in the notes feature on your smartphone, and just, jot a little A, B, and C for you in the notes section. It doesn't have to be 3 columns, but this is a really useful, inexpensive way for everyone to have access to be able to do this, okay? But that doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. So you're carrying this with you through your life, and you used the example before about you go to grandma's house and there's always a tantrum at grandma's house. So the behavior happens and the child has a meltdown. And it's really important that during a meltdown, no matter what you think the cause might be or what you think might have happened, that we keep ourselves as emotionally even keeled as we possibly can during challenging behavior.
Oy, is that hard. Because you feel all the pressure of, oh, it's happening again. I can't, oh, this is the worst time, because it is always the worst time, right? It's like they have a sensor that can tell when is the least advantageous moment for you for them to have a meltdown. I don't think it's a coincidence, right? So you're having your own emotional meltdown inside, but it's really important as parents that we try to remember to keep it on the inside in the moment. Later on, go and have a good cry with a friend, do whatever you need to do, but in the moment, it will not help if we get emotionally off kilter as well. So you try to stay calm and focus on things that you can do. That always helps to temper any kind of emotional upheaval that you're feeling. And I can attest to the emotional upheaval that's possible when your child's having a meltdown, especially when it's in public. Not fun times for us. But think about making sure that the area is safe, that you remove anything that could potentially hurt your child, or that your child could potentially, if there's somebody around that your child can hurt, that you remove things, anything that they could break, that you secure the area. That'll give you something to do while you're staying calm and passive. And while you're thinking about it, start to think like a scientist. You're watching this behavior and start to notice it in a very dispassionate way, like how you're going to describe. The experts call it the topography of the behavior, right? What does it look like? What are all the different things about this behavior? And I have to say that when you get your head thinking like this, it really helps you to stay calm. So you're looking at the behavior and going, oh, look at that. He's kicking his legs now. Okay, right? Instead of going, oh my gosh, he's kicking his legs, I'm so embarrassed, right? He's kicking his legs. I'm going to make sure that I note that when I have time later on to get out my sheet. Okay, and he's snarling and he's spitting. Okay, that's really interesting, right? You just stay on that, just the facts, ma'am, kind of level, right? It really actually helps when you can get your head into that space, and it's hard to get there, but you can do it. So you're just taking note of the whole thing, almost like you're watching a video of something that's happening to somebody else, honestly, because you're gonna take notes later on. And it's easiest to start with the behavior because it's fresh in your head, and you write down, okay, he threw himself on the floor, he pushed his plate on the floor, he slapped his sister, he spit, he tried to scratch me, he went over to pick up grandma's lamp and tried to throw it, all of that stuff. You write everything down. But also note what time it is, because we're doing investigation here, and we want to take all the possible variables and note them. So you write down, it happened at 12:04, and this is exactly what it looked like, and write as much as you can possibly remember in that B column. Now, the next thing that's probably going to be fresh in your mind is the C column. So what happened as a consequence of that? And you can also be taking note of this as the meltdown is ending. What happened as a consequence? Because sometimes it's something we say or do that's part of the consequence, and sometimes it's something else that happens. Like, did the dog bark and come over and, start licking the child? Did the sister, when he bit the sister, did she smack him in the head and then he started to cry, and that, stopped the rampage and caused him to be in a heap on the floor? Did grandma offer him candy to try to break him out of the meltdown? What were the consequences? Did the TV turn on? Did the TV turn off? Did mom and dad start yelling at each other? What were the consequences? And a lot of times, once you start to list the consequences, when you're thinking about it, you go, oh no, I didn't think about the fact that, I turned on the TV to try to distract him and took him over, and it was his favorite program, and he probably saw that as a reward. And we get into judgment about, oh, I blew it, right? You don't need to judge yourself. You're a human being. You're doing the best that you can in a difficult situation. Tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow, after we use this chart, we're going to be better. But for today, you don't get to judge yourself. It's not fair, right? So don't include judgment, and don't hold back, because holding back because you're afraid that you're going to judge yourself or that somebody else is going to judge you is going to prevent us from really know what's going on. And I can tell you that I have done it. We have all done it. At some point or other, we have all rewarded challenging behavior in ourselves, in our children, in the people that we work with. We've all done it. So forgive yourself. You get to. We're all human. But really take note of all of the different consequences that happened as a result of the behavior. It's really going to help us. And next week, we're really going to be spending a lot of time talking about how to modify this column here, the consequences. But once you've got the behavior all written out here, and you've got all the consequences listed here, then we're going to go to this powerful little column here, the A column, which stands for antecedent. Antecedent means what happened before. What happened right before the B happened? It might be that you put a demand on the child. Did you ask them to do something? Did somebody else ask them to do something? Did something in the environment change? Was there something that came into view that the child hadn't been able to see before, good or bad, right? Because a lot of times there are clues in this column that if we're really diligent, somebody else might be able to see or that we'll be able to see. It's really hard, though, to see from a 360-degree perspective. And a lot of times, you weren't paying attention during this moment. You didn't start paying attention until the behavior happened. That's human nature. But go back through it and start to gather clues, and because what you'll start to see is a through line. If you do this for a while, let's say you do this for a week, and if it's a behavior that's happening once a day or 2 times a day, you're going to start to see some patterns that arise. And especially the more you pay attention to this A column, the more you'll see the patterns. You go, well, it happened at 12:02 on Tuesday and the TV was on. And then it happened at 12:04 on Wednesday and the TV was on. And then on Thursday it didn't happen and the TV was off. So you start to put together, some clues as to why this might be happening. Because remember, our kids are very sensory, and sometimes it can be something that they're picking up on that we're not. It could be a flashing in a fluorescent light that we're not seeing that they're seeing. So put as much here as you can possibly think of, and know that it's helpful to have other eyes, to ask somebody else who was there in the room, what happened right before? By the way, when your child comes home from school and the teacher says, oh, we had a problem with, this and so happened, the first thing we want to ask is, what happened right before? It's one of the biggest clues to why this behavior is happening. So be a detective, put on your Sherlock Holmes hat, and start to begin to figure out and take notes on what's happening right before. Big clue as to why the behavior is happening. Behavior does not happen in a vacuum. There's always something that happens, the behavior happens, and then there's always a consequence, whether we mean it to be a consequence or not. Okay, so once you've got this piece of paper and you're building on it and you're taking notes on it on a regular basis, as I mentioned, you start to see patterns. This is where we get into very powerful land, because we begin to understand what the function of this behavior is. What's the paycheck for this behavior happening? And I always like to remind myself that we don't have a whole lot of control over the behavior. This is the big fallacy that we all think, oh, well, I have control over that behavior. That's my child, and they're not going to do that. And I know I've participated in that kind of crazy thinking, been in the doctor's office before where my child was kicking the chair, and I've sat there and said, stop doing that. Don't kick the chair. Stop doing that. Like a little magpie. And as much effect, right? Because the child continues to do it. And then I put my hand on the leg. Stop kicking the chair. Stop kicking the chair. And, what am I going to do? Follow him around when he's a 40-year-old and, be saying to him, don't kick the chair? Ultimately, the physical behavior, we don't have a whole lot of control over, especially as they get older and bigger. But we do have so much control over the antecedent, and we have ultimate control over the consequences, almost always. So this is how we are going to change behavior. When we're trying to build a behavior, we manipulate the antecedent and the consequence to make it a really pleasurable experience so that they want to engage in the behavior more often. And when it's a behavior that we don't want to see as much of, we change the antecedent and we change the consequence so that we are no longer feeding this behavior and we're no longer setting it up. Does that start to make sense? Okay, so that's where we get into antecedent modification. We're going to change the antecedent and we're going to set up whoever the person is, whether it's a child that we're working with or an adult that we're working with, we're going to set up different circumstances and hopefully head this behavior off at the pass. So we're going to take a break, and actually we're going to go to the A word, and we're going to see a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2, who's had the benefit of over 2 years of therapy where all the therapists who work with him and his parents as well have been working on understanding that he has behaviors that have an A, a B, and a C, and we're going to change behaviors in a way to have them be more favorable by manipulating that A and that C. So we get the B that we want. Does that make sense? So again, this is an ongoing documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Jack Riley was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2, and it's a wonderful example of how powerful this kind of intervention can be if we make sure that it is quality ABA, and we want to start it as soon as we possibly can. So take a look. This is the A word, and when we come back, we're going to break this down a little bit more and give you some holiday tips for things that we can do in this A column so that we have less challenging behavior. Stick with us.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack.
Jack Riley.
He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Exciting.
I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
Hi, Diana.
Hi. What are you looking at?
How did you
Is this
know?
Diana?
Hi, Diana.
Hi, Jack Riley. How are you?
Jack Riley has been in preschool for a few days now, with Jessica as his shadow. Today, his team meets to discuss how school is going, such as how Jack Riley's behaviors have been and how his teacher is handling him, and what they can do to help.
The first 2 days I was kind of feeling her out because she's actually new to teaching preschool, I guess, in general. So I didn't want to make her a little bit nervous. I was telling her, it's always okay to reinforce appropriate behavior. Like, don't forget to do that.
Yeah.
So I was showing her a lot with the other kids as well as him. Looks like there's room for growth. She just seems to kind of is trying to get into the whole hang of preschool. But I just reminded her like why I'm there, to slowly wean myself out and have you take over.
Yes. How much are you able to back off and let him kind of do his thing?
Outside play, pretty much 95%.
Awesome. It's just the play.
It's just the inside play.
The tantrums, what's evoking the tantrums?
It was snack time, because they provide the snack at school, and yesterday was like bagels and cream cheese and like diced pears, and he wanted neither. But instead of saying, hey, I don't want that, he started to flip out. And then I reminded him he had goldfish, he just has to use words appropriately.
Good job.
And then after that, he wanted milk, but they didn't have milk.
You're almost done with the level.
Okay.
So he got really upset, and then he felt that if he screamed it louder, he would get it. So I said, no, we just don't have it. So I told him once, and then it still wasn't okay. I had to pull him out because the other kids were getting a little bit uneasy. So I didn't want to direct attention to him. So I let him have it outside for 2-3 minutes. After he calmed down, I just told him, you don't have it. So either drink water or drink nothing. That's just what we have. Sorry. And he was fine after that.
If you're seeing that as like a reoccurring thing, then we can just teach them the rule. You know, if they don't have what you want, you say, oh, I wish they had milk, but okay, teach them the replacement thing to say, and then we'll take data on in vivo. Is he able to use the replacement behavior that we've taught?
What'd you have for snack yesterday at school? What was there? But you didn't like it. What was there? Do you remember?
Peaches.
Okay.
And peaches are good.
And what else?
Peaches are peaches good for me?
I love peaches. I think they're so good, and they're very good for you. They have lots of vitamins.
And what else?
I don't like them.
Yeah.
That's okay. You can just say, I don't like peaches. So you give the roll,
Okay.
have him practice, and then we'll take data on if he's able to implement the rule.
Should I be packing him a juice box? And
No. I think it's good to have him kind of be okay with if it's not there, it's not there.
As much as you can fade back. Only jump in during those times where he really needs you so we can.
So if I say, tell me about a dog, and then you would have to say, A dog has fur, it has a long tail and 4 legs. Okay?
Yes, some dogs.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you something. Tell me 3 things about Steven.
Steven is a teacher.
He's a teacher?
He just from his back cave.
He came from his bat cave?
And he doesn't live on the street.
And he what?
And he doesn't live on the street.
And he doesn't live on a street? Okay, I'll take it. Tell me 3 things about a kitty cat.
A kitty cat's just an animal,
An animal,
and it's somebody's pet.
And it's somebody's pet.
And Squally has one. And Squally has a dog.
No, so it's a pet, it's an animal, and
it's fat.
it's fat. Can you say something else about it? How many legs does it have?
4.
It has 4 legs. Okay, so tell me 3 things about a cat.
A cat
You said
is
it's a-
somebody's pet.
Somebody's pet?
And he has fur.
And it's fur,
And he kind of has 4 legs.
And he has 4 legs. Very good. Tell me 3 things about Lainey Grace.
Lady Grace is a baby.
She's a baby?
And she's 1 year old.
And she's 1 year old?
And she's my baby.
And she's your baby?
That's your baby?
She's my sister.
She's my sister.
Okay, so all by yourself. Tell me 3 things about Lainey Grace. All by yourself, go.
Lady is small and
She's
1
small.
year old.
She's 1 year old.
And she's pretty cool.
And she's pretty cool? I think she's pretty cool too.
Okay, our cute factor is just through the roof right now because Jack Riley is so cute. And I'm holding here Dress Me Elmo. Now, he's got a green shirt on, so that's why he looks a little funny, because our green screen won't show you that. But this is the most darling toy. I kind of really like him. But we're giving him away. As much as I love him, we're giving him away during this hour. This is a Dress Me Elmo, and you can see on his feet, he's got ABCs on one foot, and he's got 1, 2, 3s on the other foot, and he sings a little song. I won't start that because then he talks for a long time. But he has buttons on his hands. He's got different parts on his clothing, and it's hooked up to sound. So if I zipped his zipper, he'll say, "You zipped Elmo's zipper." I'm going to do the little orange tab on his leg so you can hear what he's saying.
You closed the orange rectangle strap on Elmo's shoe.
Right?
Thank you.
So really great for working on adaptive skills, for being able to do, and see that he encourages us, right? There's our paycheck, right? The consequence for doing this is that Elmo talks to you.
Cool. And get ready for school.
And he is cool and ready for school. I just love you, Elmo. Anyway, living out a dream here, like I'm on Sesame Street. We love the receptive language building skills here. That he's languaging what the adaptive skill here is, and he says, "Oh, you opened the orange tab on Elmo's shoe." So the child is getting that receptive language. That Elmo is actually languaging for them what they have done, but so that it's going to encourage them to build those receptive language skills. But it's also, he's so reinforcing in and of himself. He's a paycheck, and so they're getting opportunity to build those skills because they're going to need to Velcro and they're going to need to zipper and do all these lovely things. And then when there's a pause, Elmo will encourage them and say, "Let's play some more." And as I said, you can work on ABCs, you can work on alphabet, but you're also working on the adaptive skills. And he's just picking cute. So he's one of the things that we're giving away during this hour. Again, if you're just tuning in, he's part of our Holiday Giveaway Extravaganza. And there's a second toy that we're going to cover in just a second. But what you need to do is watch during this hour, and at some point Emily will flash a phrase or a word on the screen. You want to write that down and write down the toy that you want to win during this hour. You're going to email us. Emily will put the address on the screen for you. You'll email us, and you have to do that by 7 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. In the subject title, you're going to say which toy it is that you want, and in the body of the email, you're going to write the
word of the phrase that Emily shows during this hour, and of the correct responses that we receive by 7 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow morning, we will pick a winner for Elmo and a winner for our other toy. So Elmo, I'm going to put you over to the side here while we talk about this fabulous Iron Man toy. So here we are. This is the Iron Man repulsor. There we go. I'm going to put it right here so that you can see. All right, we have to go to break because something happened with my camera. We're going to go to break and then we're going to come back and talk about Marvel science. Stick with us.
So the holidays are fast approaching, and you might be looking for a fun cookie recipe you can make with your kids. Well, thankfully, Breads from Anna has given us a great sugar cookie recipe that we can make that's gluten-free. So let's get started. Here's some of the things you'll need. For the dough, you'll need 1.5 cups of vegetable shortening, 2 cups of sugar, 2 tablespoons vanilla extract, 1 tablespoon almond extract, 4 eggs, 3 cups of Breads from Anna dairy-free flour, 2 cups potato starch, 2 teaspoons baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And for the icing, you'll need 1/2 cup of shortening, 1/2 cup of butter, 1 tablespoon vanilla, 4 cups confectioner's sugar, and 2 tablespoons of almond milk. To start with, we're going to just mix together our liquids. So we've got our shortening, eggs, our vanilla, and our almond. And we're just going to go ahead and cream these together. So once that's all creamed, we're going to go ahead and add our dry ingredients, starting with our Breads from Anna flour. And we've got our potato starch, and we've got our baking powder and salt. We're also going to go ahead and put in 2 cups of sugar. All right, once that's all blended together, we're going to go ahead and cover this and chill for about an hour or overnight in your fridge. So it's been an hour, our dough should be cool. So we're going to try to roll this out to about 1/2 inch to about 3/4 inch in thickness. So while I'm rolling out the dough, I preheated the oven to 400 degrees. And I have a baking stone preheating in the oven that I'm going to set these on. But if you don't have a baking stone, that's okay. You can just use a cookie sheet with parchment paper. Now you're going to take your cutter and just cut out all your cookies. All right, so I'm gathering my cookies, my little dudes here. That's good. Let's go ahead and put these in the oven. And these should be good to go in about 6 minutes. So while our cookies are baking, we can go ahead and start making the frosting that we're going to use once they're done. So we're going to need our shortening. We're going to go ahead and add our butter. We're going to add our vanilla. We're going to start to blend this. Okay, so once we've creamed these together, we're going to go ahead and add our sugar just a bit at a time. And last but not least, we're going to add our almond milk just to soften it up a little bit. All right, that looks pretty good. So once our cookies are done baking and we've given them time to cool, we can go ahead and frost them all. Okay, so our cookies are ready. Let's go get them. These look pretty good. Now's the part where you get to be creative with your kids. Feel free to ice these in different colors, with sprinkles, however you want. We've got our cool cookies here, our homemade icing. All right, these look great. For more of these recipes and to possibly win some of your own Breads from Anna, go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autism-live, and we'll see you there soon. Thanks for joining me.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We were having so much excitement here. We blew a fuse or something because of our toy giveaway. I had been telling you that during this hour we're giving away the Dress Me Up Elmo, but we're also giving away from Uncle Milton Toys this Marvel Science. This particular toy is the Iron Man Repulsor Ray Tech Lab. And
hopefully my son is not watching, because we got one of these for my son for Christmas because it's just so awesomely cool. If you missed where we demoed this toy on the show, you can go back and watch. This was the week before Thanksgiving, but it's this very cool toy that looks like the Iron Man thing that he has on his chest, but it flips open, and it has it's almost like a hairdryer. It has a stream of air, so it floats a ball, and they can play with friends and have these different targets, and they have to walk and get the ball through the targets. It's a very cool game. It has an element of science to it, but it also, if you think about it, was going to work on some fine and gross motor skills, concentration, cognition, executive functions. Really awesome, cool toy. I know that this is going to be something that we're going to be playing with on Christmas Day, because this is already under the tree at my house. So remarkable toy, and somebody else is going to get one of them. If you want to win this toy, remember, all you need to be doing is watching during this hour, see when we flash the word of the phrase on the screen that says, that is our magic word, and you're going to email that to us. In the subject line, you're going to say whether you want the Marvel Science toy or you want the Dress Me Up Elmo, because they're different audiences, right? Not all kids are going to want one or the other. So put that in the title, and then in the body of the email, make sure that you include what the word of the phrase is that you saw on the show. Okay. So, and we'll look forward to, if you do win, we will let you know via email tomorrow, and we'll be asking for your mailing address so that we can get those out in the mail to you. We have so many things to put in the mail. We're hard at work on that. But before the break, we were talking about the ABCs of behavior, leading up to us being able to talk about antecedent modification. And I want to give you a little bit of a heads up that tomorrow on our show, we've got two incredible experts who are going to be with us. Dr. Adele Nadowski will be with us in the first hour of the show, and she's going to be talking about the when we're making a behavior intervention plan. We're looking at a behavior, and we've already discussed what the function of the behavior is. We've found out what the function of the behavior is, and then we build an intervention. And there is a behavior intervention plan builder that can help us to do that. And there's a section in it where it talks about what antecedent modifications we're going to do, and she's going to be explaining that in depth tomorrow. That's in the first hour of the show. Then in the second hour of the show, we will have with us again Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and he's the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and potentially more importantly, he is the director of the Autism Research Group that does research, and he also knows a great deal about the research that's done in autism, and so he's going to be talking to us about what the research shows about doing antecedent modifications and how really truly effective it is. So both of those things will be happening tomorrow. And, by the way, next week we're talking about consequence modification. So we're getting both ends of that to really help us to understand how we're going to intervene and change this behavior. Instead of being in a place of saying, well, this is what my child's doing and I've given up, my life is horrible and their life is horrible, but this is what it is. Instead of being in that place, being in a place of saying, okay, so here's what the behavior is, here's what's happening right before the behavior, and here's what I can do to change that so I don't set this behavior up, and then here's what I can do to change the consequence of this behavior so that there isn't a paycheck for this behavior. And depending on what the function of the behavior is, you're probably always going to want to use some antecedent modification and some consequence modification strategies, but depending on the function of the behavior, one or the other might be particularly more effective. Okay, case in point. I promised that we were going to talk a little bit about the four usual suspects. There's usually, when we look at what the function of the behavior is, it usually boils down to, especially with kids, four usual suspects. You ready for this? Number one, attention. That they will engage in this behavior to get the attention. And here's the tough part of attention is that we have the assumption that people would only engage in that to get positive attention. That's just not the case. Look at the world and you will see, look at any tabloid paper and you will see people will engage in behavior to get negative attention if they really need to get their attention quotient filled. Okay? So that's the number one reason, but it isn't always the only reason. It could be that they're engaging in a challenging behavior to get access to someone or something. So if the child is running out into the street in front of cars, you know, it may be because they know that the house across the street, they have puppies that are there and they want to go see the puppies, right? Or that lady gives them candy, whatever it is. But there is a reason why it's not random. And one of the reasons could be that they're wanting to gain access to someone or something. For the child who hits the babysitter, and then the babysitter calls the parent and says, you know, you got to come home because I can't deal with this, and the parent comes home, it could be that the child wants access to the parent, right? Another biggie is to escape someone or something. That if child doesn't want to do what's about to happen, they will engage in the challenging behavior. And the tough thing that's about this one is that we say, but they ended up having to do it anyway. But studies have shown that even if there is as short as a 10-second lag between the behavior and when they were made to do whatever the thing was, 10 seconds is enough of a time to make it reinforcing enough to engage in the challenging behavior. So think about the child who throws the tantrum at bedtime. Think about the child who throws the tantrum as they're about to get into the bath. Think about the child who throws the tantrum as they're about to get in the car to go someplace, right? If there's even a 10-second delay of having to do the thing that they don't want to do, it's enough of a paycheck to maintain that behavior. And then the last thing, which is the hardest thing, is when something is automatically reinforcing. So we'll see children who engage in challenging behaviors because there's something about it that either feels good or relieves something that doesn't feel good. So when we see children who are rocking, there's something intrinsically about the rocking that feels good to them. When we have behaviors like this, and truly with all of the behaviors, we're looking to give a replacement that fulfills the need, right? And it's particularly true of that with the kinds of behaviors that are automatically reinforcing, that there's automatically a paycheck in it. So there's a paycheck in this rocking, and we can't just say you can't rock, right? We have to give them the paycheck that feels and fulfills the need that the rocking was fulfilling. And we want to pick something that's more socially acceptable, right? But we can't just take that self-soothing behavior away. Okay, so let's take the example of the number one reason for a lot of things, which is attention. And we see with attention that we can have a consequence strategy, and we should have a consequence strategy for when somebody engages in a challenging behavior just to get attention, right? But it's really effective to nip this behavior in the bud if we do an antecedent modification that's very powerful. So imagine that we've got a child who, let's say that it's the moment that dad comes home from work, that's when we're having the meltdowns. And you go, really? Seriously? But as we look and we do our 3 columns of what's the A, what's the B, and what's the C, we see that it's happening in a regular interval, and then it's happening when dad comes home. And you say, but dad comes home earlier in the day on Tuesday, and it's still happening then. So a lot of my environmental things are different on Tuesday than they are on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So what's the consistent thing here? But it could be that when dad comes home, dad's talking to mom, and they're having a conversation, and the child feels left out. And so the child engages in the challenging behavior, and what happens then? Mom stops talking to dad, dad stops talking to mom, everybody's focused on the child because the child is now swiping things off of the end tables, and all of the attention is to the child. Now, the ultimate consequence may be that, the child gets put in a timeout where he's not getting any attention, but then in that initial moment where all of the attention got put on the child was enough of a paycheck that we see that it's maintaining the behavior.
behavior. So what are we going to do, right? Well, we want to stop giving attention to the behavior. That's consequence, right? We want to stop giving attention to the behavior, but is there something that we can do before the behavior that prevents the behavior? And with attention, usually there is, because what we want to do is look at this child as a vessel, an empty vessel. They're an empty bowl, an empty vase, and they need to get attention, much more attention than we ever thought that they were going to need. And we need to constantly be keeping that bucket full so that they're not having to act out to get the attention. At the same time, we're going to give a replacement behavior that gives the child appropriate functional communication skills to ask for attention instead of throwing a tantrum, right? But so important that in the beginning, we're just going to shower this child with attention. And we're going to play with this idea of that when dad comes home and, walks in the door, that the first thing that we do is include the child and make a whole bunch of attention around the child with mom and dad both giving tons and tons of attention, and then finding a really preferred activity for that child to do that they like to do alone. And we're going to teach them how to do that by themselves to enjoy it. And once their bucket is full, then we're going to let them engage in this really preferred activity, and we're going to reward them, reward for engaging in that challenging behavior. And that's when mom and dad are going to take their time to talk and convene about what happened during the day, right? And while we're doing the same thing, we're also, during the rest of the parts of the day, we're teaching the child in moments when their bucket is already full, how to appropriately ask for attention. And if you want to know ways to teach that, that's covered very extensively in the A Word. And we just showed you a little while ago, the A Word. You can go to their website and look up ways that he was taught to appropriately gain attention and ways he was rewarded for doing that. So eventually what we have is a child whose attention bucket is full. So they're not having to act out, but we can't just rest on that, right? We had to create a replacement behavior so the child has a functional way of communicating their needs in appropriate circumstances. We're also probably going to, later on down the road, teach the child how to appropriately wait when they can't get the attention, and very slowly work up to that taking longer and longer. Maybe initially we only make the child wait for 10 seconds until they get their reward paycheck of attention, and eventually we'll work up to them being able to wait 20 minutes, a half an hour before they get attention, right? And in the meantime too, we're also going to put that consequence strategy in where we're not going to give attention when they've been engaging in challenging behavior. And that we're going to talk more about next week, but just know for right now, it's not that we ignore the child, we ignore the behavior. And that's a very fine distinction, but we will go over all of that next week. So you begin to see how that antecedent modification of what's happening in that equation. Dad comes home, he and mom talk, there's a meltdown, and then the child, gets attention and then gets a timeout, right? That wasn't working. But in our new way, we're working up to a place where quality of life improves. I know, can you hear the angels saying, it makes sense. It takes a little bit of time and effort, and you have to be willing to rearrange yourself a little bit to put that antecedent modification in. But when it works, oh my goodness, it is the biggest sigh of relief, because you feel powerful. I can deal with these things. You feel like your child is teachable and that you have the skills to make a difference in what your lives look like. So it's not all this. And you get to, what actually happens is you end up having to be able to have a conversation, the two parents, because the conversation wasn't happening anyway because the child was melting down. And when you have a time where the child is all fixed and the bucket is full and he's taken care of, then mom and dad actually can have a pleasurable conversation, and everybody is much happier. So this is why we talk about antecedent modification, and there are other things that we can be doing as well. So we're going to take a break, we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about some things that we can be doing for antecedent modification, specifically in the holidays, to help smooth out the wrinkles in our lives. So stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi,
Welcome back to What's Left. We're enjoying some wine. We're going to make some fake bourbon chicken tonight, but we're not using bourbon. It's not gluten-free. So what we're doing, and Kristen, you're doing a great job at pounding and getting out all of your energy on that chicken, so go take it out.
I know. You know, how many of us moms are at a park or we're at a grocery store and somebody walks up to you and, you know, your child's having a meltdown and, you know, having not one of those fun days. This is a great thing to come home to. You would come home and really pound that chicken and you would feel so much better. That's basically, it kills two birds with one stone.
You're making a great meal for your family.
Yes, and you're feeling great.
You're feeling better about that jerk who said, why can't you get your kid under control?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take all your pounded, aggressive chicken and start to saute it in the skillet. And I'm just going to add a little bit of my grapeseed oil. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this in. We love the way we're going to just try to brown this up and cook it a little bit. Just a little bit of salt and pepper on top. And we're just going to go ahead and brown this. Great, Kristen. Great job. I think we're almost all brown here, so I'm going to get your help over at the cutting board if you don't mind.
The cutting station.
The cutting station. We're going to cut this in about 1/3 slices. You go chop it up.
Okay.
And I'm going to start on the sauce.
Okay.
We're going to take the orange juice, water, and add that in. And I'm going to measure out the fake soy sauce, 1/3 cup. Add that in. Take in your ketchup and your brown sugar and go ahead and put that in. So in here is the red pepper flakes and ginger. So we're going to go ahead and add that in. So in the red pepper flakes, if you've got a kid that's really sensitive and doesn't like to bring a lot of heat to the kitchen, you can definitely omit that. That's not a problem. And then my favorite, as much garlic as tolerated. And the last thing that we're going to do, and as we get this heated up on the skillet, is we're going to pull this in, thicken to the sauce, and add in the arrowroot to thicken it. So we're going to go back to the frying pan and put in our sauce, and we're going to bring it to a boil, and that's when I'm going to add the arrowroot. What arrowroot does for everything, like when we're baking with gluten-free flours, this adds kind of the oomph to hold it together. Arrowroot is also a great sauce thickener. So let's go in and add the chicken. Thank you again for helping get this all together. I made extra sauce because I'm a saucy girl. So we made a really nice meal here tonight. We're talking just the right flavors, right texture. So I'm going to serve you up to what we're going to have for dinner, if that sounds good to you. Yes! So
I always love coming
over. So what we made over here is just really some, what I call my dirty rice, and it's just some of the really nice different spices. I use a little red pepper flakes in that as well, beaumont, parsley, and just salt and pepper. It's really simple. And some of my favorite, which is zucchini sauteed. So I'm going to just go ahead and serve you up, and you can get to be my guinea pig once again.
I will always be a good guinea pig anytime you cook.
Bon appetit, my friend.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us at Autism Live. Kristen, I had fun with you today.
I always have fun. Thank you.
It is. It's great. And we had fun with you, too. And if you have questions or want to see us cook some more different dinners, just email us. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com or go to Facebook, facebook.com/autismlive. Or Taka Now. Taka's got tons of recipes, over 2,000 recipes ready for you to come and explore and have some fun. And thanks to Holly for this great bourbon-free bourbon chicken. And we'll see you next time on What's Love. Bye, guys.
You say hi, we say hi. Let's get wild, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have been talking about antecedent modifications and going through the ABCs of behavior so that we understand what changing the antecedent is. It's what happens before the behavior. And it is part of, it is not the complete and total package of a behavior intervention plan, but we have so much control over antecedents and they can be very effective. We just talked about how effective it is when attention is the reason why the behavior is happening. But it can be very effective in a lot of other ways too. So especially we want to talk a little bit about the holidays. It's a very difficult time for a lot of you right now. You got a lot of stress that's going on. So you're coming to the table, first of all, maybe a little overstressed, a little overconcerned about other things that aren't happening in the moment. I'm guilty of this.
and a little bit less capable of dealing with the challenging behavior that you know is going to happen. So let's back it up for just a second and talk about the antecedent that involves us and where we are, and coming from a realistic point of view of saying, what can I handle and what can I not handle? Because I don't know about you, but when I'm a little on edge, I am twice as likely to jump to a consequence that really doesn't fit. Where something happens and I'm like, that's it. There's no video games ever again, right? These carte blanche statements that's my consequence for something happening that I don't like. We want to be really careful about those kinds of things and spewing out things that we can't back up. Because what we'll learn next week is that whatever the consequence strategies that we put in place are, we need to follow through on them, and they need to be able to be followed through on. So coming from a place of acceptance and saying, I'm a little overdone right now myself. And so before anything happens, saying to yourself, I'm not going to meter out consequences until I've had a breath to think about what they're going to do. That this is going to be an antecedent modification for us, that we're going to remind ourselves before we go into a potentially stressful situation to breathe and maybe plot out what consequence strategies might be afterwards in advance. That wasn't very clear. So if you're going into the grocery store and you know that your child's been having meltdowns in the grocery store with all the stimuli that's going on there and the people offering samples that maybe your child can't have, or whatever it is that's happening in the grocery store, before you go into the grocery store, you're going to stop and take a moment for yourself and say, I might have some difficulties with my child in the grocery store. I might see some challenging behaviors, and here is how I'm going to deal with this before we ever go into the store. Then you can take a moment to potentially, depending on what your child's abilities are in terms of receptive and expressive language, to talk with them about it, and to set up a circumstances in which before you go in the store where you say, we're going in, here's what's going to happen, here's how long we're going to be in the store. My son likes to know, what are we going in for? He will ask me in the car, because we've done this so long, I say, we got to stop at this store, and he says, what are we going for? And I say, a couple of items, and he'll say to me, like what? Are we talking about 10 things? Are we talking about 20 things? And you know what's hilarious about this is that my husband loves it when my son asks this, because then he gets the information that he wishes that he knew, but he doesn't feel like he has enough right to ask. I don't know why, but my husband would like to know, are we there for a half an hour? Are we there for 10 minutes? Right? It's a very empowering thing to know how long you're there for, especially if you're being dragged along, because let's face it, they don't find it as reinforcing as I do. So my son will say to me, how many things do you have to get? And it helps him to pass the time in the store, because he knows, we only have to get 2 more things. It becomes a game for him. So talking about what we're going to do when we go into the place. And you might be surprised. You might say, my child doesn't have enough skills to understand that. But that's why we're going to talk about the visual schedule tomorrow, to talk about in a visual what's going to happen and how that can help them to deal. But you'd be surprised, a lot of times our kids have more receptive language than we know that they have. So talking about, we're going to go into the store and we're going to get 10 items, or we're going to get 15 items, whatever you think it's going to be. And if you have to, round up as opposed to down. If you think you got to get 12, say 15, because there's going to be a couple of things you're going to pick up. So talking about that, and an expectation of what kind of behavior you expect to see. So you can say, and I'm really going to be counting on you. Here are the good behaviors that I want to see. Keep it short and simple. If the child is small and you want them to remain in the cart, and so, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stay in the cart the whole time, and we're not going to unbuckle our seatbelt. And if you do a really good job with that, here's what the consequence will be. That, when we go through the line, we're going to make sure that you get that treat that you really like to have, whatever is appropriate for your child. But be clear about what it is you want to see. That's an antecedent modification, is talking about what the expectations are. You'll find that it lowers your stress and it lowers their stress. And if you give them a reasonable expectation of behavior that you want to see in that venue, you're going to know what you're looking for. You're going to let some things that aren't as important go, and if you work it right so that you make it reasonable and attainable behavior, you're going to get to that good consequence, which is going to build on other times when you go to this venue, that you'll find that your child is willing to be happy and wonderful without as much work down the road. I don't want you to think that every time you ever go to the store, it's going to be all this work. You put it in play and you do it over and over again, and it just ends up happening that your child is happy and wonderful at the store. They may still, like my son, want to know, how long are we here for? How many things are we getting? But you know what? That doesn't cost anything to have a conversation about, we're going into the store and I need to get a bunch of stuff, right? What my son does with me now is he negotiates with me. He'll say, how long are we going in there? And I'll say, I've got a bunch of shopping I've got to do. I've got a really long list. It's more. He'll say, how many things? I'll say, more than I can count. And he goes, oh. And I say to him, so, I'm going to let you listen to your earphones and listen to the music that you want to listen to in the store. Oh, okay, right? And now he's a happy camper, I'm a happy camper, we're going to accomplish what we need to accomplish, and I've head off any meltdown, any difficulty at the pass. That's really what the antecedent modification is all about. Letting everybody know what's happening is a great way to do that. So think about all the different places that you can apply that to during the holidays. All the different places that you can be 100% clear about your expectations and have them be reasonable and have the good consequences clearly outlined. You can be using your token economy systems that we've talked about before on the show. You can download free ones on your smartphones, and our kids can help us to program them sometimes. They're free apps. Just look up token economies. I think mine, the one that I use, you know what, I have a different one now because I've switched to an iPhone. But on my Android, I've been using Easy tokens, and let me see what the name of this one is. Well, I'll figure it out during the next break. But in any case, it sets up a clear structure where the child knows if they're on track to get that good consequence, and showing them the token economy before you go into the venue, whether it's the grocery store or it's Aunt Martha's house. Really good antecedent modification. Think about, too, some of the sensory things that come along with the holidays. Some of the smells, some of the sounds, some of the texture things. For some of our kids, we'll have people who report and say, I don't know why Christmas morning is so unhappy. When we start unwrapping the presents, that's when it all goes downhill. But there are some different wrapping techniques that create less noise that isn't grating. My son the other day said this amazing thing to me. I don't know what we were talking about, but we were talking about somebody else, and I was saying, you really need to be mindful of the fact that this person gets really bothered when this happens. And Jem was saying to me, well, why? And I said, I'm not entirely sure why, but do we really care? We know that it matters to them, so can we just try to, do it in a way that because it's not going to cost us anything to do it in a different way. Can we just try that? And he said, oh, you mean like when somebody rubs styrofoam? And he said, because for me, it's like somebody is sticking nails in my head. And he said, it just makes me absolutely angry when somebody does that. I didn't really know that until he languaged that, right? But I remember when he was little and we would try to unwrap presents, he would run from the room. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. And fortunately, somebody said to me, okay, you need to experiment before Christmas with what kind of wrapping things won't bother him. Eventually, we discovered that if we wrapped things in tissue paper, and I could put it in like 4 layers of tissue paper, that he loved the sound of tissue paper, but the really heavy wrapping paper that made a rattle sound just drove him nuts. So looking at and saying, what's causing this meltdown? Oh, it's the sound of this heavy wrapping paper. You can make other choices and wrap things in different ways. We also did one Christmas where we didn't wrap anything. It was all in gift bags, and there was one little piece of tissue paper he'd pull out and could pull out the gift, and everything was fine. So when we look at the A, B, C and break it down in that way, we begin to see what's causing this, and you can get really clever. I'll bet you guys could come up with many more ways that you could head something off at the pass
if you just had the information, and doing that ABC chart can really help you to do that. So I want you guys to be thinking about what can you be doing to change an antecedent for challenging behavior during the holidays. We're going to take a break and we're going to come back to talk. I promised that we were going to talk about errorless learning. So we're going to do that. Stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, you know, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT?
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received a grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle. Without that, we wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. We underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I wanted to bring up that the one that I've been using recently is called Kids Points, and it's a very specific app. It was free and it's available for iPhone because normally you want to only give good points, but we've been trying to a little bit of a different intervention with my son for because he's been doing a lot of good stuff and we want to reward him for that. But he also, we're trying to change some of how he's languaging some stuff because he's loving the language way too much. I'm talking about swear words. And so he loses points from his good point column when he uses colorful language. So this particular app features, it's for older kids, and it features, you can add points for good and take away when they do something. It's sort of like we used to do a response cost token economy where he'd have the tokens, and if something happened, then he would lose a token, right? So it's like that, but in a much more grown-up, appropriate way for him, because he would be embarrassed if I was bringing tokens and pulling them off of a Velcro thing at this point in the game. But we did that for years, and it really, really worked and was effective. I said we were going to come back and talk about errorless learning, but I really want to finish this point, though, because we asked you the other day, our question of the day was, do countdowns work for your child? And countdowns are a great antecedent modification when you're trying to help a child to transition from one activity to another activity. And, it's that thing of, well, we need to go, and we're going to go someplace, and saying to the child, giving them really appropriate timeline and saying, we're going to go in 5 minutes, so that they don't have to get into this behavior to escape the going. They get, that sort of walk down into the pool, that this is what's going to happen, so that it's a lot less stressful and we don't get to melt down. We may still have a little bit of behavior, but it can really help. So we asked you guys, do countdowns work for your child? And several of you wrote in. And somebody wrote in and says, yes, on my 3-year-old, when she starts to get impatient, when her YouTube video doesn't play the right way, there is a countdown on the video, and I made it into the habit of saying the countdown. So when other things arise, such as her having to wait patiently, I say the countdown, and she knows what to expect when the countdown is over. Great way of teaching waiting, using a countdown that was already organically a part of her life. Another person says always 10 down to 1 when I'm in the kitchen, and 99 down to 1 and when I'm in the shower. Works every time. This is great strategy, Mom, for being able to take. I'm sorry that your shower is only 99 seconds, although I'm hoping that you're having the countdown in between be longer. It's also a great way if you're trying to engage in something that the child finds really difficult, and saying to them, it's going to be over by the time we count to 5, like if they're getting a needle or something like that, that they count down and they know that when they get to the 5 or the 1, whichever way that you're going, that it's going to be over then. Great way to do, they tell you to do that during an earthquake, to count, because usually it's less than 30 seconds, and that it helps to calm you doing the countdown. Another person who says no, now he thinks it's a game and counts with me. 1 to 3, I get to 2, and he says 3. It's funny but frustrating. Thank goodness I don't have to do it often. Well, you've taught the skill of counting to 3, but when we talk about consequence modifications next week, then we'll also talk a little bit about compliance, because that's what the factor is there, that when you're getting to 3, they think it's a counting game, so there's some confusion there. And we want to make sure that when we're doing these countdown strategies, that it's not just about, I'm going to get to 3 and there's going to be a punishment. In fact, we really want to be working the other side of the equation, that, at 3 something is going to happen, but when you do it appropriately, there's going to be a reward for it. That's really how we want to be using countdowns. That when I think about having to get my son out of the pool, which is always a hard thing, we have a community pool and he's a little fish. He loves to swim, and getting him out of the pool, so I do the countdown from 5 minutes down to 1. And when he gets out of the pool appropriately, when I say it's time to get out, there's a reward for getting out appropriately, that we we get to go home and there's some kind of treat, and I give him, you know, I'm there with the warm towel because it's cold getting out of the pool, which it doesn't feel good, right? But I give him a rub down and I say, that was so awesome. You know, now we're going to go home and we're going to, you know, do this, that, or the other thing, whatever the reward is for the day, to make sure that I'm solidifying that when I listen to mom, good stuff happens, right? Another person who says, no, my son is learning how to count himself, and he will hold up the fingers right along with my counting, and he runs away from me. He thinks we're working on counting. Of course, when he realizes mommy means business, he has to throw in that head-tilted cheesy grin too, which it makes it so hard to discipline him. Almost 4 and so darn smart. He knows how to work me all right. And you know what? Bless you for being honest about that, because they all do. And but I think next week when we talk about consequences, it's going to get that much clearer for you guys, because I think you need to flip this equation upside down. That the counting is supposed to lead to the good things, not what we were all taught when we were doing the countdown when we were kids, that I'm going to get to 3 and then, you know, it's a, you know, something aversive. It's spanking, or it's you're in trouble, or you're going to be in a timeout. We want to be, we're doing the countdown and then something good happens. Figure out how you're going to give a reward for behavior, and you will see that compliance go up, because that's really what it is compliance. And another person who says, yes, countdown from 5 to 1. That's the only way she responds and checks in with me by the time I get in at 1. And someone else who says, yes, expect. Then when doing so, often all that she wants to do is make us count, then no more counting. First this, then works after. Great. Okay, so more responses there, but I wanted to talk about errorless learning. So what errorless learning, we talked about this earlier, it was our jargon of the day, that it's when we're teaching and we're using circumstances to make sure that the child isn't going to make a mistake. So let's say that I want to teach the label for Elmo, that this is Elmo. And so I put Elmo in front of the child, and there's nothing else here. There wouldn't be a screen here. And I say to the child, touch Elmo. And there's no other choices here, right? Now, there's still the possibility that the child doesn't know what touch is, right? Because I'm teaching that as well. So I can prompt, right? And I can very gently lead over, and I have the child touch Elmo, and I go, yay, good job. That's good touching Elmo, right? And I'm not going to wait any longer than that. I'm going to say to the child, touch Elmo. And I might wait for just a split second to see whether the child starts to, if I've been rewarding enough with my good job, the child may start to do it themselves, or I may need to prompt some more. But I'm going to do it in a gentle way, and I'm going to be going, yes, that's Elmo, good job. And I may use Elmo and have Elmo do something and kiss the child and put Elmo back and say, touch Elmo. But again, there's nothing else here. It's not as if I have Elmo and the iPhone here that I say, touch Elmo. I'm not giving a choice. This is errorless learning. And you might think to yourself, what's the point? The point is that we're teaching Elmo. And later on, we're going to add to it. And what Skinner said, what we talked about earlier, is that we don't have to have the person fail in order to teach effectively. We really don't. Studies have shown how effective it is to start teaching a skill using errorless learning. You know, I used to be a classroom teacher, and one of the things that has changed in many years is that a lot of times now, when our children are in the older grades in school, what we've seen is most effective teaching with any kids is that before we're going to teach a subject, we're going to give a pre-test. We give them the test, and we give them the answers to the test. Crazy, right? They didn't do that when I went to school, but we give the test and we give them the answers. And then we teach the material, but we've already given them the answers. We're not trying to make it a trick, right? Because the goal is to teach what we're teaching. Yes, later on we have to discriminate between the fact that this is Elmo and this is an iPhone, but we're going to get to that eventually. First, we want to get to Elmo, and we do that by making sure we get to the reward. And the reward happens when you get it right. How can we expect a child to learn something and keep doing it if we can't get them to the reward? So you can think of it as cheating, but it's a really effective teaching technique. That if you think about if you were going to go and learn how to surf, because I think that would be like the most difficult task for me. It requires core strength, it requires balance, it requires motion, it requires water, all of these things. I'm probably going to be set up to not be successful. And I would imagine if somebody were going to teach me surfing, they would teach it in a way to me that they were going to ensure that the first time I go out on the board, that I'm going to have a measure of success so that I'm going to want to come back and do it again, right? Well, we can do that with everything that we teach our kids with. We're going to teach errorless learning in the beginning to give them that taste of success. So I start with Elmo, it's touch Elmo. I help them to touch Elmo and I go, yes, that's great, yay. And Elmo might tickle them. I might have Elmo say something, but I don't want a lot of time to go by. I say, touch Elmo. And I might put my hand here and like not even touch them. They touch Elmo, I go, yes. And the first time that the child touches Elmo, when I say touch Elmo, I'm going to pull out all the stops. Whatever this child loves, I'm going to do tickles. I'm going to let them play with Elmo for a couple of minutes. I'm going to have Elmo hug them. I'm going to do whatever this child responds to so that they really start to get it. And then I'm going to, come back to it again later on in the day, and I'm going to say, touch Elmo. I still am not giving them a choice, right? Eventually, I'm going to take Elmo away, and I'm going to teach touch iPhone. And I'm going to say iPhone and touch iPhone, and we're going to do all those things, and I'm going to use errorless learning to teach that when I say touch iPhone, that this is what you touch. Eventually, and it sounds like it's a long time. With a child, it could be, the next day. When they know these things and can do it regularly, I'm going to put these two things here, and I'm going to say touch Elmo. It's very possible that the child is going to touch this because it's the last thing that they had worked on, and they're going to go and touch this. And I'm not going to go, no, this is Elmo, but I'm going to block this wrong response. So if they go to touch the thing, I'm going to guide their hand over and go, good job, that's Elmo, right? The first time I saw it, I was like, that's cheating. It works. Who cares if it's cheating? It works because eventually the child gets, oh, when she says iPhone, I'm supposed to touch this. And when she says Elmo, I'm supposed to touch this. And I'm telling you, it's almost like you can see the little synapses and the arc go from one to the other. You watch the child go, I get it. And then the next time you do it with something else, it's that much quicker. And then you see that they start to get things that you didn't even teach. And you go, oh my goodness, how exciting is this? But it all starts with making sure that they get rewarded for the right answer. So we're not even going to give them the opportunity to get it wrong. That's the power of errorless learning, setting them up for success and showing them how fabulous it is to get it right, doing it over and over and over again, and then slowly discriminating. So I would, go to two things, and then eventually I would have the mouse here, but I would make sure in the beginning it's all things that are really reinforcing to that individual child. And Elmo might be, and the iPhone might be, I don't know for the mouse. Depends on the child. But this is why and how we use errorless learning. Think about something that you've been trying to figure out how to do and ask yourself, okay, is there a way that I could do this with errorless learning for yourself? And then think about it with a child that you love on the spectrum or a teenager on the spectrum. I want to teach them this skill. What are the A's, the B's, and the C's? How can I get to a good consequence using errorless learning so that I can expound on this and be really productive, because we know science has shown that this is really, really effective, putting all of these things together. So I said to Emily, I feel like we've done the ABA 101 course today. I hope that you found it interesting. I hope that you found it helpful, because it is absolutely essential that all of our kids get access to experts who do this kind of work with our children, and that we as the parents and teachers and practitioners get the training in these kinds of things. Now, if this little light bulb for you and you go, okay, I sort of get it, but I need a lot more help. I want to figure out what I'm doing, and I want to be able to make a difference in my life and in another person's life. How am I going to learn more about this? The good news is I don't have to send you to college, although you can go to college and learn all these things. They have degrees you can get in this. You absolutely can, but if you're a parent and you've got a child, you may not have the time or the money to be able to do that in the amount of time that you want to help your child. And it's not just parents, you know, you might be an aunt and uncle or a teacher who's watching and you say, I want to be able to do these things very quickly. And the good news is that we live in an age in which you can learn these things. I want to send you to ibehavioraltraining.com, a really wonderful website where they teach all of these things, and it's taught not by a parent, right, but by real experts, board-certified behavior analysts who put it in easy terms as a parent would, but with a much deeper understanding of how these things all interplay. They have a wide variety of subjects and titles. They're video trainings where you get to take notes. They give you quizzes to see if that you're really understanding it. Really effective, and what you do is you purchase the right to the video for a period of time, because you might want to spend a little bit of time or a lot of time with it, and you can share that with other people in your family while you're working on it, and they're very cost effective, as low as $7.50 for an individual topic. And by the way, they have a whole holiday survival kit that they have right now. We're going to be giving some of those away in the coming days, and it's something great for a family to use during the holidays to help you with some of the strategies that we talked about today, but they'll go much more in depth, and great to give to in-laws who are going to be visiting in the coming days during this holiday, to set everyone up for success so that they don't feel like they don't get it, and you don't have to be the person teaching it to them. I'm angels singing, right? Very, very cost effective to be able to do those kinds of training, and they're effective. We are entirely out of time here, but I want to thank you for being with us today, and I hope you participated in some of these great toy giveaways. Remember, you only until 7 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow to win. We had 4 different items today. One of them, the fabulous and wonderful Elmo. Tomorrow on the show, Dr. Adele Nadowski is going to be with us, and she's going to be talking about using a behavior intervention plan, and particularly paying attention to antecedent modification to be used whether it's at home or in the classroom. And then Dr. Jonathan Tarbox will be giving us some information about what the research is on this kind of work with a child and why it's so effective, so that we can do our level best, because we owe that to all the individuals on the spectrum. We're out of time, but we'll be back tomorrow. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.